So a subscriber asked me a question today in the comments, and the question was to the effect of, how do I know which actions will take me up or down the emotional scale? We talked about in the video on flow, this emotional scale, which many spiritual teachers talk about and popularized very much by Abraham Hicks, and talked about also by Hawkins, the writer of Power versus Force. So basically, only you can know what action or behavior would take you down or up the emotional scale because, again, it's all relative. There's no hard and fast rules about action for any individual because every individual is different. Every individual has a conscious and subconscious makeup that is different from every other individual. So basically, the main point here is that we're going to do a very detailed video about the emotional scale, how to move up it, and so on and so forth, because this is the key. But in this system, you're going to find that the majority of tools that we teach often offer the indirect method as opposed to the direct method for tackling a problem or for tackling an issue. Why is that? Because issues in our lives have grown to such an extent because we've usually been having them for so long because we've been thinking about them the same way that you can't attack them head on. They're going to defeat you every time. So you have to use what Vadim Zeland in reality transurfing called outer intention. You can't attack them with inner intention. For example, if I go to my refrigerator and I want to get, say, a turkey hot dog, it's very easy. I just walk to the refrigerator, I get the hot dog, and I cook it. There's no doubt there. So I can go and attack that very directly. But if I want to start a $1 billion oil conglomerate, let's say, something that I don't have experience with and something that I have no idea how to achieve, the first few steps that I take towards that is possible because everything is possible and everything is already given to you the moment that you conceive it. But the first few steps that you take towards that, you have to go towards it indirectly. You don't even know in the rational scene, on the rational scene, what the next step is because you have no idea the cause and effect relationships of that yet. So you have to rely on the indirect method. The same with the emotional scale. Because a lot of people, when they first start dealing with this material of the emotional scale, they become so hypersensitive about their feelings and they start feeling guilty about feeling bad. And then that simply compounds the feeling so they can't get out of it. And the only way they get out of it is by going to sleep, basically getting drunk or forgetting about it. So what you have to do with emotions, there's a great book, and I'm not going to use profanity on this channel, but it's called F Feelings. And I don't agree with everything in the book, but the main premise is correct. It says that it really doesn't matter how you feel as long as you know interiorly that you're going down the right path and so on and so forth. And the Stoics talked about this as well, and they called it virtue, which is not to be confused with puritanical virtue. This is virtue of being a human being. This is virtue of optimizing your potential as a human being. But the point is that, also in my program, in my system, I differentiate feelings and emotions. So I'm going to make a very much more in-depth video on this when we talk about the emotional scale. But feelings are the simple physical sensation that you have when an emotion comes up. An emotion is that physical sensation plus the thought about what it is. So for example, you get angry and then you have this feeling and then in your brain you call it anger. And it can work circularly. So you could think about anger in your brain and you can have the feeling, or you can have the feeling and it could provoke the thought of anger. So what you do is you focus purely on the feeling and intensely on the feeling, and then you forget about the thought because you're so focused on the feeling. And then that feeling just becomes as it's part of you. As Krishnamurti, I think, said, now it's like your arm. So you're not really concerned about your arm, you just feel it there and it's there. And what happens is, when you observe the feeling, it dissipates. So we're not trying to control feeling, we're not trying to control thought, because we're here to have all those experiences, all those feelings and thoughts. So basically, don't get too hyper obsessed with trying to move up the emotional scale directly. You move up it indirectly, and you do that by observing your feelings, by observing your thoughts, and then by starting as early as possible on a positive momentum. Ideally, when you wake up in the morning, you meditate and you start on positive momentum, and then you see how long you can go until a negative feeling comes up, and then you use the tools. But basically, this is all about momentum. You don't want to use effort, or you want to use as little effort as possible, both interiorly and exteriorly. And this is leverage. This is another huge component of this philosophy, is leverage. So you want to use leverage with every single aspect of this, going from feelings and emotions all the way towards your business dealings and entrepreneurship. And using leverage, you get the most results from the least effort. And that's what we're trying to do here. So thanks for your question. And like I said, we're going to make more in-depth videos over the weekend. And until later, this is Javier Novoa, and I'll see you soon.